Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to this Your Market Navigator series. And today I'm very happy to have Ajay Garg, who has been our senior fund manager on the mutual fund side, who has been with Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund for over 21 years now and has been managing funds since 2006. He's managing some of our marquee funds, whether it's ABSL 96, which is our ELSS fund. He's also managing, not now, but historically, so the outstanding portfolio of wonderful companies in this fund. And there are certain unique characteristics in the way Ajay manages funds. And I'll be very happy kind of talking to Ajay once again on this forum so that everyone gets to understand his views on the market, the way he's investing, the portfolio construction process that typically he follows, what he likes and doesn't like while kind of investing, both in terms of conceptual and philosophically, and also in terms of given current. So welcome Ajay to this conversation, and let's just begin by having your views around some of the long-term trends that you see post-COVID. So I'm sure that COVID has left almost everyone surprised with the magnitude and the period for which it has kind of continued to impact economy, market, and even the way we all live. So, what do you think are particularly from the market and economic point of view, but long-term trends that you think will emerge or have already kind of emerged and are in the first phase, and they will develop from here? So, a few your views on such trends.
Thanks, Bhavdeep, for having me at this platform, and good evening, investors and channel partners. So, Bhavdeep, since you asked a very valid question about what are the trends during and post-COVID. So, in investment, it is all about not the past; it is all about the future. So, how future is going to emerge. So, in India, I will touch upon a bit of the past, a bit of bad memories for the investors. But anyway, it has been, in fact, a blessing in disguise. So in 2016, November, December, we saw demonetization. Then we had a GST transition. And post that, we went through a big institution failing, which was ILFS. And now we went through a COVID crisis. So during this era, what happened? So basically, and 3-4 years back, there was a significant and a powerful telecom player who entered into the market. And now he is number one. And that helped in internet penetration, that helped in online sales. These all things like right from Demon to GST, they helped in transitioning from an old economy to a new economy in some sort. So that is the way, that is the reason we as a country, we could handle this COVID period much better than in case this COVID period would have come in, say, 2010 or 2012. This could have been really a problem for our country.
Interesting. So, can you just relate with some examples of how do you think that the kind of reforms you talked about, Demon or GST kind of big developments that took place? What is the linkage between those and preparedness now?
Our country, as we all know, it was a cash-driven economy, right? So post-Demon, that cult started changing, right? From a cash-driven to a digital economy. Post-GST, it kind of accelerated the move. So that helped in taking care of, or in fact, moving from a pre-COVID to a post-COVID or during COVID era quite well. And especially quite a few sectors, they have gone through this transition without even the investor or consumer or customer realizing that there has been a change.
Perfect. So essentially, digital adoption and the acceptance of it by a wider mass and systematically is what has helped us be more prepared for this kind of situation. Okay, got it. So another question that I had, Ajay, was, this is oftentimes from retail segment we receive this question. That people typically want certainty of deposits, right? I mean, and at the same time, the return potential of equity markets. I mean, most of the time, we say that what market offers is opportunities and possibilities and not certainty. So if you want certainty, you kind of have to give up upside and go for deposits and or conventional investments. And if you really want to capture the possibilities, then one has to be really be okay with the uncertainties of the marketplace. Now, how do you see? How do you weigh these two poles in terms of the choices that investors and distributors have to make, and how do you approach these two different ends from investment point of view?
So, Bhavdeep, what we have as investors or as a fund manager, we have realized that none of the asset class it performs in a linear way. So it goes through upturns and downturns. So the best is if you want to have a consistency in your portfolio, so you need to have a proper asset allocation. When I say asset allocation, then there has to be 3-4 asset classes that have to be there essentially as part of portfolio, so that you beat the volatility, and the consistency of returns is year over year rather than it is quite sporadic and quite seasonal in nature. Gold and or passive funds, that is emerging as a good or important asset class to be in. And also the importance of the asset allocation. All these volatility, these teaches one important lesson. So this volatility around global markets, around COVID, in the country, it has taught us that lesson of being properly diversified across asset classes, rather than getting skewed or investing heavily into one asset class.
Okay, so essentially you are saying asset allocation is the key for that kind of consistent return. But even in terms of investment approach, I have found that the kind of companies that you invest in are the companies which seem to be having lot greater focus on cash flows and lower leverage and things like that. So would you like to kind of relate it with some sort of what kind of certainty do you go for while investing in equities?
So my investing career, there were quite a few learnings within my investment career, and still I am learning. When I took a fund management, so that time I used to take sector calls. I was okay with taking sector calls, and active bets. I was okay taking active bets, and that I do currently as well. Taking sector calls, somehow I learned that whenever in a bullish market or in a bearish market, the difference between a top performing stock within the sector and the worst performing stock within the sector is so stark that my style changed to a bottom up stock picking fund manager rather than being a top down fund manager. So that is one thing. And second thing, what I realized is to remove uncertainties as much as possible. That can happen through ground research. That can happen through studying the companies. That can happen before investing. If you do proper 360-degree analysis of the company and the future ahead, and the management quality, and how good is the CEO and the management team. So, and also I try most of the time, I try to be a customer myself, so that lends additional element of certainty before investing. into the stock. And once you have all these things in place, the chances of success are even higher.
Even
So that
improves,
has been
absolutely.
my 6-7 years of the journey. So I've been practicing this thing past 7-8 years, and the outcome has been really spectacular.
Wonderful. So essentially, what I hear you say is that the way you kind of go about reducing uncertainty in your portfolio is by additional ground level research, and if possible, you become a customer of that company yourself, so that you have a
Yeah,
greater insight into how the company operates and things like that. So it's
yeah,
just not limited to financials and
yeah.
what meets the eyes in terms of information, but going below that and experiencing it. So there are some of the, as I was looking at your portfolios, and in fact, I have been with ABSL AMC for the last over 12 years. So I've seen some of your portfolio companies have really become very large, and some of the companies like Honeywell or Biocon kind of companies, which when you bought were small caps, and now they are kind of large cap companies. And there are quite a few other companies like Kansai, for example, or Bayer Crop, or a couple of other companies, such companies where those companies were bought when they were like small cap, but have turned out to be a fairly large from where they were currently mid cap or larger mid caps. So how did you go about picking up these companies? If you can just help us understand your portfolio construction process and the filters for picking up those companies.
So, Bhavdeep, this is like asking a mother about her secret of cooking. So probably I will not be able to answer it. so, but I'll tell you, lot of work goes behind. So it is not Ajay Garg who is investing. It is a team of experts who are helping Ajay Garg invest in these companies. So, as you know, or most of you all will know, that our investment team is quite large, and there are people around, and we are further supported by a good set of brokers and or channel partners. So, we do proper research, we identify the change. We identify and also study the characteristics of the company. We go to the extent of 10, 15, 20 years, how the company, what all mistakes they have done, and how they have gone through those pain periods and ups and downs, and how they have performed. Especially the characteristics of the company is one can actually know how they have performed during the downturn. So, or how they have been able to transition themselves during the change period. So, and how they are taking care of the market share, and how much satisfied are the customers, how much satisfied are the shareholders. Is there a equitable treatment to the non-promoter shareholders, just like the promoters? So these are all characteristics that are very, very important, and each of these characteristics are important. The company may be great if they are not sharing their wealth with the non-promoter shareholders. It is just a hope story. So it doesn't work at all. So the stock can languish or maybe keep going down actually. So ultimately, the company has to make money for the rest of the shareholders as well.
Right. Fair enough. So fairly good conceptual, as at least that you have given some recipe of that, and that's what you are
Yeah.
looking forward to. As I look at your portfolios, and one of the I think couple of factors which really stand out about your style of investing is the portfolio turnover in your portfolios, whether it's R96, which is a real assets fund, or MNC fund, for example. So I think I wouldn't be wrong, I guess, if I were to say that you would be one of the lowest turnover equity portfolios in the mutual fund in the industry. So how do you really manage to go about holding onto your conviction in the face of huge market volatility that we see? And number two is particularly because your evaluation, pretty much like sales guys, is daily evaluation of how are you doing. This is your daily NAV. So how do you manage to hold on to your conviction in the face of such one uncertainty, and number two is you being evaluated on a daily basis by the investors and the partners alike?
So, Bhavdeep, you'll be surprised. In fact, as you would know, I started my career as a trader. So, being a trader, actually, the portfolio turnover should have been very, very high. Mm-hmm. So that is one important lesson which I learned as a trader, that being a trader, it is only the mediator or a broker who makes more money. Mm-hmm. So being an investor, if you can work properly, and if you can work hard before investing, then the company starts working for you. So that has been the thought process while investing. And I tend to buy companies with the intention to own them or be a part owner of the company, rather than with the intention to trade or sell them. So it is not that we have not sold exited the stocks. We time and time again being having a look at the portfolio, and also weed out companies that have not delivered as per expectation, or the times are changing, or the businesses may go through Kodak moments. So that is where we see to that we are out of those companies before they become junks. And it will be a combination of past leaders, but definitely they have to show some characteristics that they can be future leaders.
Right. In terms of one other standout feature besides very low turnover ratio is your dislike for the leverage in companies' balance sheets. How do you see that really playing out? Do you think that you are missing out certain opportunities also, because of late what we have also seen is some of the companies which are doing exceptionally well have been highly levered. So do you think that that is still relevant, staying away from high leveraged company and focusing more on companies which are having free cash flows, good management, good industry dynamics, etc.?
So, Bhavdeep, I had learnt during my school days or during early part of my career, I had learnt a thumb rule which is still relevant. I don't know whether it will remain relevant forever, but slowing GDP calls for a caution, and leverage acts like a poison, whereas accelerating leverage acts like a catalyst, right? So that is where that is how my bias towards non-leverage is there. And at the same time, once you are into leverage set of companies or industries, the characteristics is very much volatile. So volatility is something which I believe my set of investors will also not like it. And I believe in one thing, which is risk-adjusted returns. So returns have to be commensurate with the risk I have taken. So higher volatility means higher returns. So so I am more of a follower of consistent returns, good management, rather than having owning cyclical companies. So rarely you will find cyclical companies in my portfolio.
Okay. But talking about your first, your philosophy of, rather something that you said you have learned during your school days is in an environment where GDP is falling, of course, leverage works like a poison, but on the upswing it works like a catalyst. So do you think? So how do you position? So you are saying you are not really anti-leverage necessarily. You are saying that you want to avoid companies with leverage, particularly when GDPs or overall economic growth is likely to sort of slow down. But most of the people, so would you be in that camp where most of the economists and experts in the market believe that in the next few quarters you will see a recovery? Now, whatever the shape of the recovery, whether it's U-shaped or V-shaped, and there are multiple shapes which are coming up, like K-shaped and square root shape and all that. But effectively, we are going to see a part of the economy or the whole economy grow from here. if that is the case, will you be more open to some of the cyclical companies, or why will you leave those opportunities if they are anyways available right now? For example, I'll just give you one context that you are quite underweight banking overall in both your portfolios. So how would you explain your view on the market now for the next few quarters and your position in the portfolio?
So Bhavdeep, okay, these are multiple questions loaded into one. I'll try to answer it in a most simple manner. So in our country, so financial services, which is roughly or not a little north of 30% in the index, right? And IT services will be around 13, 14, 15% in the index. So these two sectors, once a person says sectors, first of all, I'm not a believer of sector approach. The reason is like while investing, for me, before investing or while investing, the company there has to be a USP about a company, not about a sector. So once you take a sector approach, you find, or these two sectors, you find banking, especially banking and financial services or IT, that there's a lot of commonality factor between two or three set of companies. You pick up any three companies out of top 5 or top 6, and you'll find the returns converging towards a sector return. So unlike globally, where Apple is very different from Amazon, though these are all qualified as tech companies. So Apple is different from Amazon, Amazon is different from Microsoft, Microsoft is different from Google or Alphabet, and Alphabet is very different from Facebook. So it is all about the uniqueness of companies that brings in returns or re-rating. Otherwise, once the sector is commoditized, actually it calls for a re-rating of the sector or the companies rather than re-rating. But that is where the mispricing exists. So that is one question I believe you had asked. And leverage, I'm a believer of leveraging on companies' strength rather than taking a financially leveraged company. So one of the largest company by market cap in the country, which is now top 50, or in fact moving towards top 40 companies globally, that has decided to deliver itself and is parting stake with a lot many PE investors, and a couple of strategic investors have also got into the company. So it is all about that, basically leveraging on the strength of the partners and leveraging on the strength of the management. So once the company is also leveraged, so during tough times, all the companies, they go through tough times. So during these periods, a cash surplus company will be better positioned when sales are slowing, rather than a leveraged company who will have to pay interest. And at the same time, cash surplus company will be getting interest during these times. And cash surplus company will be able to pay employees in time rather than employees taking a hit during these downturns, or the channel partners taking a hit during the downturns.
Okay, so quite smartly, almost redefined leverage. So you are saying leverage is not only the financial leverage, but the capabilities, meaning what are the strengths of the company that you want to rather leverage those companies rather than depending only on financial leverage. So okay. Another fund that you are managing is an index fund, Ajay, and of late, I mean, index funds have been in some way, or most of the fund managers have been really finding it difficult to outperform total return index of late. And in one separate conversation that we were having, you said that companies, the large companies have become larger in the last few years, and that's quite visible in India as well as in overseas markets. So how do you see this trend continuing? And you think the mega company or the large companies will continue to become mega companies, or you think the broad basing will start sooner?
Number one, as I said earlier, two asset classes. One is gold, and another one is passive investing, which is index funds. So these are finding an important place in any investor's portfolio, or at least there's a desire to beat the volatility to have these funds in the portfolio. So last 3, 4, 5 years, we have seen mega companies become really big. And that is where the skewness in the index is also there. And in India, we are bound by regulation, or active manager is bound by regulation, where he cannot invest more than 10% in irrespective of the company being there in the index north of 10% in terms of weightage. So that is where the challenge lies for the active fund manager. So that is where the importance of passive investing also comes in. And the degree can vary, or the percentage allocation can vary, but definitely it requires to be there in the portfolio. And good part of the index fund is, or Nifty fund is, you'll always, if someone is doing sleepy investing, and always there will be top 50 companies being there and being part of the portfolio. So once the company is maybe slowing down on sales, or maybe it has lived its life, it will automatically ease out of the index over a period of time. So weeding out happens automatically or systematically, and automatically you'll find the winners being there. So you may miss out the early part, where a good active fund manager, he'll be able to spot the companies that will be going to be coming into the index. That is where our specialty as an active fund manager comes in. So we endeavor to buy companies that will come into the index of tomorrow or next year, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than company entering the index and then we chasing the stocks and buying those stocks. So the thought process is to buy companies that are going to be there in the index of tomorrow, rather than the other way around, or hugging the index.
Okay. But do you think there's likely to kind of continue this trend, or you think the trend which kind of was prevalent for last 2 decades, just till about 2017, will make a return anytime soon?
So for some time, probably the index investing will continue, and till most of the fund manager or active fund managers, they learn, or they come to know what are the kind of companies that are going to shape up the future. So still we are in the discovery stage. So at some point of time, active fund management will again be back on a larger scale, both locally and globally. But till such time, during the transition phase, that confusion is there, and generally fund managers or any investor, they look at the rear view mirror and invest. So actually, one should be looking at the windshield and investing.
Right. Perfect. So in some way you mentioned, you had mentioned in fact some time back that the next HDFC Bank will be the exit. So how do you really identify the future winners, and whether the companies will continue to become larger? So on that, you mentioned that the next HDFC Bank will be this HDFC Bank, just in a bigger in size. So that kind of thing will continue. So you are saying indexing or index funds as a favorite investment avenue will continue for some more time at least. So that's my broad key takeaway for now. Okay, so just talking about your portfolio of late. I mean, what has really worked for us in these 2 portfolios particularly, and what has not worked in last 6-8 months? So would you like to kind of walk us through some sort of themes that worked, some sector overweight, underweight work did not work, and what are you kind of what changes are you making in the portfolio?
Being early while investing, though one had to take a little bit of pains for 6, 7, 8 months, but that actually helped. But to give an example, when ILFS was happening or the news they started coming in and GDP was slowing, we were cautious on the financials. So, but financials as a sector, they continue to rally. Okay, so that was a bit of pain for me as a fund manager, and probably the investors must be thinking, "Oh, kya raha hai?" But ultimately, the later the results were quite good, and we tried to avoid accidents, and we were cautious. So, in the world of investing, it is all about something very similar to a person when he learns how to drive a car. So while learning to drive a car, it is not the accelerator which is the most important. It is the brake which is most important. So it is all about in the investment. It is all about knowing when to apply the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
In the bull market, anyone makes money, but in the bear market, only few outshine.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well put because the long-term wealth creation has as much to do with how much less you are losing in bear market as much as how much are you making in bull market. So absolutely right.
So if you look at the funds what I manage, the drawdown of the funds will be quite lower than the industry. So one is the focusing on the managed. Second, the cash surplus nature of the companies that acts like a second level of defense in the downturn. So you will rarely find cash in my portfolio. Rather, I believe in having companies with cash in their books where during downturn they can use the opportunity to buy out companies who are facing a problem and grow inorganically as well.
Sure. Great. So we have got a few questions. So viewers, you can go to Q&A section and put in your questions. We'll be happy to take any question which we have not taken so far. So we have already received a few of them. So one is regarding the performance part. Mr. Parmesh Kumar is asking, hello, Mr. Ajay, if you could see the performance output of Aditya Birla Sun Life TaxRelief 96, it's low compared to other plans in same platform, meaning comparable funds. Of course, we agree with stability of this product. However, we are looking forward to improved return percentage. So, Mr. Parmesh Kumar, so how would you, particularly given the fact that last 3 years, generally market hasn't delivered a very good return, and it's in like middle single digit, as we know. So what would be your response to Mr. Parmesh Kumar?
So Parmesh, good you highlighted in a common platform. So it keeps me under check. It keeps me basically keeps me awake. And the good part is, or in fact, the bad part, what you highlighted is mid-single digit returns. But though it has beaten the benchmark, but the good part is it is all about most of the companies. If the return is low in the stock market, so that is actually an opportunity for at least the good quality companies. So the good news is waiting to come. So that holds true for the entire market as well, or to major part of the market where the returns have been subdued. And market, and especially in India, we have gone through Demon, we have gone through GST, we have gone through ILFS, we have gone through COVID. Now everything market has tested all these things, and actually, 3, 4, 5 years it can be quite bright and shiny, especially one part of the geography when most of the countries are against that. In fact, people are all armed against one particular country, and there's a kind of a de-risking happening, and a lot many companies are looking to invest through India, and quite a few companies have are basically they are trying to de-risk from one nation that used to be exporting hub for the rest of the world.
Sure. Thank you, Ajay.
So if we were to look at, sorry to interrupt, Bhavdeep, I actually, yeah. So if we were to look at 3 years, things will look quite bad on the absolute performance because this product should be compared with the alternative options which ATC, other ATC categories they provide. And if one was to look at 7-year and 12-year return, it will be from mid-teens to high teens or low teens to mid-teen return, which is a decent return. And these are long-term portfolios, and one should view them from that perspective. And especially if your investment, if one is investing with a good fund manager, or if a fund manager is investing in a good set of companies where the returns are going to only accelerate, then there will also be good news from a stock market as well. So stock markets have a habit of rewarding the investors on a bunched up basis rather than on a linear basis. So that can be viewed, that should actually be viewed as opportunity to invest. And last 3 years being low on returns, it is actually, I feel, that is an opportunity for one to invest for long term.
And I quite agree that if the long-term return of a fund is good and short-term return is subdued, it means more of an opportunity than a challenge, because if someone has delivered for over a decade, and then if 3-year return is kind of not, while it's not that it has underperformed benchmark, but it is not as much as one would have expected. Maybe that can potentially be seen as more of an opportunity than a challenge.
But one should also, sorry, Bhavdeep, so one should also be not complacent that returns are going to come. So one should also keep in mind whether the fund or the companies invested by the fund manager, basically one should do a check periodically that whether these balance sheet of the companies continue to be robust or the book value continues to increase, or if the balance sheet is breaks, then bets are off. So as you all know that my thought process is more on cash surplus companies. So in all probability, things should be all looking decent as we move forward, rather than, and in fact, while investing also, we look at what the company, what promise the company holds in the future. Like for example, what 15 to 20 years back, auto used to be, or four-wheelers used to be for any particular person. So four-wheelers used to be bought for business purpose, B for pleasure, C for status purpose. So during this COVID time or post-COVID, there's a realization or a demand which is coming up for housing or extra space, one smart room within the house where the person can work efficiently, and work from home culture has come not only locally but globally. So anyone and everyone, whoever was owning a house or living in a rented accommodation, he was anyway utilizing all the rooms, and no one keeps the room empty. And suddenly this hidden demand of one extra room or a smart room has come up. And if one was to do an analysis, then almost one extra room is equivalent to a cost of owning a car, because the car depreciates, and real estate in India at least, it rarely depreciates. It goes through a time correction, and having gone through a time correction for a long period, so we are already seeing some signs of residential real estate picking up. So these are again trends And there's one more important trend, which everyone knows. It is all focus about health and hygiene. And third, which I've been following up quite well, is more and more ladies are likely to join the workforce, because there was a reluctancy from the ladies' side, because in Indian traditional households, their time was occupied with the kids and old parents. But now, in their spare time, at least they can do a part-time job, working from home, and companies are okay with work from home as long as the they're getting delivered what they want.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a right set of new trends which are emerging, and pretty much long-term ones. So there are a couple of other questions and which are related to more of MNC. So on MNC, in fact, you have answered this question multiple times. So I actually did not want to ask, but because so many people who are here might be hearing to you for the first time. On the MNC portfolio, how do you really go about looking at valuations? Because are you really not uncomfortable at certain level of valuation while investing into companies? How do you weigh the valuation versus the prospect part? And so that's one question. Maybe I'll ask the follow-up question later, because otherwise it will become loaded once again.
As you highlighted earlier, a couple of the stocks that were picked as a small cap, they have become large caps, or they are moving towards large cap. And few of the stocks are from MNC side, and it is all about. It is not the PE that talks about the company's valuation. It is the size of opportunity. The biggest mistake we as investors make is while guessing the earnings, or while judging the earnings potential of the company. If you get the earnings potential of the company right, then the stock will work for you, or the company is going to work for you. So the historic PE, it doesn't matter. It doesn't say anything about the valuation. So it is just one piece that it is a more simple way of looking at things. Otherwise, valuations as a holistic, if you were to take a holistic picture, not many things are to be considered while valuing a company.
Very true, and I've heard you many times talk about this in many different forums.
And actually, so there's another quote what I have always used, that the company may look quite expensive today, but if you get the earnings growth right, then 2-3 years later you will realize what it was actually a value stock rather than a growth stock.
Yeah. So rather than again looking at a rear view mirror, just look at through windshield, look at the growth prospect, the demand potential of that company, of that sector particularly, and how is company approaching that opportunity. So let that be the judge of your investing rather than just the trailing valuations. Okay. Related question is from Mr. Nilesh, and it's more on, apart from low float, what could be the reason that we do not see some multi-baggers in MNC space in ABSL MNC portfolio? On one side, we had Jet Airways, on another with not so good promoter background, but Sanofi is absent. So I don't know, Mr. Nilesh, whether we'll be able to talk at a Sanofi level, why it's absent, etc. Maybe Ajay will approach it differently. And same question, another part of the question from Mr. Nilesh is, how does Kotak Bank appear as a part of MNC portfolio? So I know you have answered both the parts of the question multiple times, but because our the partners and the investors here could have joined for the first time, and or might not have heard you before. So if you can just
so in MNC we are actually a true to the label fund, and when I say true to the label fund, that we will in spite of companies being there in the index or with the competition, we will never try to chase or at the competition if we feel that is not a company that fits into the investment universe itself. So Kotak Bank, probably some of you or few of you will remember that it was actually ING Vysya Bank. So it came out of ING Vysya Bank. ING Vysya Bank got merged into Kotak, and that is how it has been there. So it was erstwhile ING Vysya Bank, so we have never bought since it became Kotak. So it has been there, and we are allowed to keep it. At the same time, we had a company called Ranbaxy, held by Daiichi, and the week they sold their stake, it found after merging into Sun Pharma, it found the way out of our portfolio the same very week. So if I remember correctly, the price was around 900, and around the same price we sold, though it went up a couple of hundred rupees, but we didn't we didn't mind shedding it off actually. And yeah, so if the stock holds promise, then we are okay owning it, but we don't do active investing. So it is all about that. So it is all about keeping it for the benefit of the investors.
Right. Okay. Fair. And one another question from Mr. Nishant Thanki. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your surname, Mr. Nishant. His question is: MNC fund has delivered 18.16% on 20-year basis, which is higher and beat all category. What is your view for next 2 decades?
So, tricky question. So it should actually be not asked. So actually, okay. So I'll try to answer it in a most justified way. So okay. So in the investing world, it is all about keeping the expectation low, and returns, if they come, it is a bonus. So, but the process, what it used to be 10, 12, 13, 14 years back, the process has only become much more robust while investing and while identifying companies. So, if you were to ask me as a macro guy, then I would say 18 years, 18% returns, those are history. You need to realign yourself with the current growth rate. But being a bottom-up person, actually, though the returns can be very, very different, what I say, and none of the fund managers can predict the returns in the future. These set of companies, mostly on the MNC side, they have been there for decades. Most of the companies, the Indian consumers or the Indian users of their products, they don't even know that it is a Firangi company or a MNC company. It looks to them as if it is an Indian company, and their brands have penetrated very deep in all households. And most of the companies where we have investment, these are from the developed world, right? So, and these are here for, if they have been present for 50 years, so they are sure they want to be here for a couple of decades, or maybe the same period for the time they have been there. And once you have deeper penetration into the country, that is where they've already done the investment, and the returns can actually be beating the historic returns. So please take it with a pinch of salt. I'm not trying to say the returns are going to be higher, but if a fund manager spots the right companies, then actually, theoretically, the returns should be higher than what these companies had delivered in the past. But some element of surprise in the past has been because there was a discovery which has started happening in last decade, or especially around 2006 post global crisis. So that is where the importance of these consistent compounders came in. That is where the MNCs started shining once again post 2008 period. So they used to be darling of the market pre 2000. So in the nutshell, I would say it should be fair to expect 1.5x or a higher return than, or it is just a number, 1.2x or 1.5x or 1.3x return than that of a traditional market. Actually, if the investment by a fund manager is right, or 1 or 2% definitely than the market.
But Ajay, given the fact that interest rates are so low anyways, don't you think that the expected return of investors, expected return of investors should come down? While I understand what you said is that bottom-up opportunities point of view, there are lots of companies and lots of businesses which could really generate substantially higher return than GDP and nominal GDP, I mean. But given the level of the rate of interest rate, the level of interest rate, I mean the level of inflation in the countries and the overall GDP growth. So, do you think that the return expectation should be contained for investors, or because it's bottom up? I mean, sky is the limit, and as long as you identify good companies, return potential is not constrained.
So theoretically, so why are the interest rates low? Interest rates are low because the growth rates have been low for the general, globally as well as locally. So, interest rates are being kept low so that inflation inches back for most of the companies or generally. So if interest rates are low, and it is a great thing for the companies that were already performing or that were already growing. There were 3-4 set of companies. One were set of companies that were, say, growing twice that of GDP, and another set of companies growing around GDP, and third set of companies growing half that of GDP, or fourth set of companies that are degrowing, right? Mm-hmm. So the low interest rate actually acts as a catalyst for stock valuations where there's a certainty of growth, right? So if interest rates were 7%, P was, I'm just giving a hypothetical figure, if the P was 30, and if the interest rates were to go down to 5%, so the P should be at least north of 30, right? So we have spoken a couple of times about it. So it is all about yield gap story, right? So so bond yields versus earnings. So equity, we all know, it is a perpetual instrument. It is not a FD. It is not a bond. So it is actually a perpetual instrument. So that is how it has to be valued, and it is all about future growth rate and how far the company can go and how consistent it can grow.
Perfect. So you're saying that's not a constraint. In the very reason the interest rates are low because GDP growth is low, and the entire maybe even
RBI, growth is a scarce commodity.
Yeah.
So if you can get hold of the growth, so it is that is where the moolah is.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the follow-up question is as category MNC can beat. So how do you see MNC as a category? Sorry, let me just read it out. As category MNC can beat all other category like did in last 2 decades in the next 2 decades. Essentially, as a category, because it has done very well compared to other categories in the previous 2 decades. Do you think that MNC as a category will continue to do so well even over the next 2 decades is what I think Mr. Nishant is trying to ask.
So actually, I would. So when we say MNCs, not all MNCs are holy saints. So so we try painting the picture with the same brush. So actually, it is not. So there are quite a few, in fact, lot many Indian companies being there. In fact, I just spoke about the largest, one of the largest oil company that transformed beautifully from a commodity to a near monopoly business, and into telecom, into entertainment, into retail, and anyone and everyone is trying to take a stake into the company. So there are lot many great Indian companies as well. So it is all about the fund manager, how he chooses and invests into or identifies these set of companies. So only thing about MNC is like the chances of going wrong reduces quite a bit. Reason being, these are companies held by global majors. They have been present across geographies, right, from emerging to developed ones, and they have the relevant experience and the products that can be launched at the right time. So it is like saying if Ferrari is a great car, but if it is launched in India at this 2,300 per capita income, it will not sell. We don't have roads. So it is all about launching the right product at the right time, and the capability of the management and the experience, which comes almost free for investors. And lot many companies in the MNC space then listed out of compulsion rather than due to any reason. So I'm more of a fund manager who tries identifying companies that are listed not because of a reason, but out of compulsion. Given a choice, most of these companies would like to increase their economic interest.
Sure, great, Ajay. Thank you very much for all your insights and or your the candid conversation. As I have known you for a fairly long period of time, is the fund manager who is committed to bottom up investing, who is always in search of companies which have secular demand growth, stable stability in terms or the free cash flow, good management, and these are the companies which find place in your portfolio, and then you kind of hold on to those companies during ups and downs in the stock market, as long as you are convinced about the potential of those companies and their growth earnings growth. So that's how I have known you, and I have been invested in your funds, and I'm sure many of your investors, as someone has rightly pointed out, you have delivered a category beating, or rather the best only for last 5, 7, 10 years, but even longer than that. So many congratulations for that track record, and all the very best as we move into this post-COVID era. And we hope to see MNC and our ABSL Tax Relief 96 and other firms will continue to doing really well for us. Any last parting comment or advice you have for our investors and partners? Just 1-2 minute message as they are, because many people are really struggling with this situation that markets are running away quite fast, economy is not responding. How should one really go about investing? So your final words.
Okay. So as an investor, which has been my learning, probably I would like to say the same to my investors. So think like a promoter, and have your commitment. Once you have identified a good fund manager, good fund house, remain committed, and low returns in the past, though one should not be complacent, but at the same time, if there have been low returns, especially on the stock market, and then probably a good news is waiting to come. So keep investing through SIP route, which is a very good product, which mutual fund as an industry has come out, and that has been for the industry as so recurring. And the thing is, identify good funds, and know yourself and what are your liabilities, and do proper asset allocation and proper planning, and don't do momentum investing. So try to be ahead of the curve and try to have patience, and let the fund manager work for you, and And one more thing I would like to highlight, these are past returns, and there's always a risk thing which has to play on, that too on a net basis. When I say net basis, so these are, this is a regular plan of MNC, and where there are expenses which are also built in, and it has beaten the gross return of S&P 500 by around 40 basis points. So the endeavor is to continue to do the same and keep identify the stocks. And with the help of, we have one of the best research team. We have got one of the best investment teams. So the idea is to keep hunting and keep discovering the stocks, and keep doing bottom-up investing, and keep following the ground research route for investing.
Great. Thank you very much, Ajay, on that note. And thank you everyone for joining us in this episode. Next week, we'll have Vinod Bhatt, who is a fund manager for us for our fund of fund propositions, both asset allocator fund, fund of fund, as well as financial planning FOF. So do take care of yourself. And once again, thank you for joining. Thanks, Ajay.